Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Paper Crafting Thursday. I'm Leslie Watkins. So I've got my pictures all printed out. I'm going to be working on meetup number 3 in my travel journal, and I thought I would take you with me to show you how I design a page. So this is going to be a little bit longer, I think, because I'm going to do a little bit of watercolor, a little bit of stamping, and I'm going to show you a idea that I have to help increase the area where I can do a little more journaling, because I've been short some journaling space on my previous spreads. And so we're going to do that together. So I'm going to turn you down, show you what I've got so far. I've done a little bit of prep work. So here we are, and these are all photos that I've printed out with my selfie mini printer, and this is a really nice little printer that can be used as you go from crop to crop or traveling or whatever the case may be. It's very compact and it does a nice job, and I really like it. And so here you can see an assortment of photos. These are other ladies that were at the recent Lulu's Way meetup in New Hampshire, and this was in August of 2025. And as usual, it was a blast. We had so much fun, and I've got some cute shots. And what I was thinking of doing was to create a kind of an accordion flip out so that I could stack the photos and not just spread them out, because that takes up a lot of room. And I have some artwork that I want to include. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these aside for the moment. So I'm just going to slide them over. And I'm going to show you the sunflower theme that I've begun preparing. So let me get my spread. The base is the hanging file folder. So here's a upcycled file folder. I've removed the hooks, the metal hooks, and I've kept the height of the folder, or the width, depending on which way you're holding it. But I've just trimmed down the sides a little. So in case you're wondering, it measures 11 3/4 of an inch, and the folded size is 8 1/4. So I've cut some things out, and I've grabbed some bits ahead of time. Now here, if you saw the previous video, you'll remember that I did some painting of some loose, just a very kind of impressionistic watercolor sunflower design. So that's what I'm using as my background. This is watercolor paper, and as usual, I'm just using the 3 colors, yellow, red, and blue. And then what I did was I went ahead and I fussy cut some of the sunflower shapes out, okay, and I sponged around the edges. And I thought that it would be really cute to create a little bit of a slightly raised, slightly 3D effect, something like that, okay. And then of course my photos here and there, and I'm not putting these in any particular order, okay. I'm just getting a glimpse of how the colors all work together. And over here I have a bunch of photos that are roughly the same size. They're not exact, but these are the ones, and maybe even this one This one's a little bit smaller, but I think that will work. This one. Okay, so I'm collecting like-sized photos. As you can see, here's Lulu getting a big smooch from me. And my thought is that I would create a little pull-out, sort of accordion fold collection of photos, and that way I can include all of these other goodies. Look at this little ladybug. I found lucky ladybugs on my tent, on my car, even on me. So it was a sign. All right, so I'm thinking maybe something like that and something like this. I also have my, let me get a different color piece of cardstock here. Where's my yellow? Oh, there it is over there. Okay, hang on. Okay. So I picked a yellow and a green cardstock that I thought would work well with the spread. And then what I did was I went ahead and I cut out my letters and my numbers. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So keeping to the design format that I've already done on the previous spreads, what I intend on doing is creating the abbreviation for the month. So in this case, it's August. So the first 3 letters of the month. And then I have the year, because I am expecting on doing this quite a bit in the future. And then I also have the state, because the meetups take place in all different states across the country. So I have those ready to go. I'll be figuring out if I'll figure out if I want them to be a sort of a vertical configuration or a horizontal, and where those placements will be at the end. And I also found, and I know a lot of you may have a stamp set that features sunflowers. I've got this retired Stampin' Up! Celebrate Sunflower stamp set, and I'm going to be using this today, and I'm going to watercolor these in. In addition to that, I've got another set called Nature's Harvest, and it has an echinacea, which I'm not sure if I'll be using that or not, but I pulled it out just in case. As far as sentiments go, I like the Celebrate, because every time I get together with these ladies, it's like a celebration. And I also saved my name tag. Okay, so it's got a little note on the back, and it's got my name. So I thought that might be something fun to include. And I have other things that I may add to the page. We'll see. Another solution might be to add an envelope that I can just stuff things into. But before I do any of this stuff, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp some extra sunflowers, so I'll have them ready to use. So this is the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. So I'm just going to grab a piece of that. And some of these scraps might come in handy, so I'll pull those out for leaves and extra bits. That should do it. If you're watching, let me know you're here. Say hello in the comments and let me know, are you a camper? Are you somebody who has done some camping currently or in the past? Is that something that you like to do? Oh, I've never actually used this stamp. That's kind of interesting. Need a bigger block. There we go. Nice, big, beautiful image. Grab my leaf. Oh, you see me trying to stick the, that's kind of funny, trying to stick the stamp to the paper. That's not going to work. All right, and then I have a double leaf that I think will be good. Grab another block. It's good to have a nice assortment of different size blocks ready to go. And I think that's enough to begin with. I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper because I'm going to stamp off. And what I mean by that is I'm going to stamp once on my scrap paper and then stamp again onto my watercolor paper, and that's going to give me what's called a second generation of image. What I mean by that is, so this is my watercolor paper. I'm just going to go ahead and get that inked up. And actually, that color is not too dark. But I'm going to go ahead and do the second image. And I'm giving that a firm press because this is such a big stamp. I want to make sure I get all of the image. And there you see I have a beautiful impression that's not too dark, so I'm not going to get those dark outlines. I think I have enough room to put a second one on here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that while I have it mounted. Give it a good press. And I'll go ahead and add some leaves to the sides. I think this is probably enough for now. I'll keep my scraps handy just in case, but I think that for today's video, this is more than enough. Okay. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit so you can see better. There we go. And I'm going to keep this fairly simple. Let me get my water painters. So I'm going to grab the medium-sized water painter. And I'm going to start with my yellow for the lighter color. I'm going to go ahead and use some of the red that's already on my palette, because these sunflowers have a deep, rich yellow color that leans a little bit towards the orange. And I'm going to grab a paper towel. Here we go. I'm just going to remove a little bit of the excess moisture, because what's going to happen is the water on the brush is going to melt the stamped image a little bit, so that tone, that gray tone that I stamped with, is going to get into the image. And I don't want to flood it. I'm just going to make my way around. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to leave a little bit of the white of the paper for highlights. Just soften that edge. Now, how do you know where to place your highlights? Well, that depends on what direction your light source is coming in. So I'm going to paint this as if the light source was coming from the upper left, which is the way the natural light comes into my Northlight studio here. And I'm just twisting the paper around so I can get my brush going in the direction of the petals. Okay, and then over here I'm coming on to the shadow side of the flower. So not as many highlights. I'm just kind of painting this very lightly. Not a lot of color, just kind of getting it wet with a slight tone. This is my lightest light, and I'm going to be painting from light to dark. And now you don't have to, but I think it makes it a little bit easier to do it that way. There are a million different ways of going about it, but I think this is a great way to get started if you're just beginning with watercolor. And even if you're not, even if you've been painting with watercolor for a long time, this is the way I almost always begin. Alright, so there is the first wash. I'm going to go ahead and mix up a light brown, and I'm doing that simply by mixing all three colors together. I'm just going to go ahead and get my center started here. Now I know this stamp set comes with or came with a die when it was first available, and I don't remember if I got one or not. I'm pretty sure I did, but I didn't bring it up, and that's okay because I'm just going to quickly fussy cut this out once it's dry. Now for the leaves, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Start with a very light mixture. Okay, so that's a little more of a yellow-green. The sunflower leaves and stems tend to have a lot of yellow in them, and then and then you get it more into the kind of a medium green. But the overall tone, I would say, is a little more, slightly more on the yellow side. All right, so there it is, just as quick as that. I have the beginning of my sunflower. Now I want this to be more colorful. I want it to be a brighter yellow. And so I'm going to go back into my yellow and red mixture. This time I'm making it stronger and a little more on the yellow side. And you'll see that I can just drop that in, and because it's still damp, it's just going to flood these areas with lots of brilliant color, and in the places where it's still damp, I'm getting a nice soft edge. Now there are some places which are the areas, for instance, in between the petals that I don't necessarily want a soft edge. In those areas I want there to be a difference between the shadow and the light, so I'm going around those areas to create that effect. Now moving in on the shadow side of the flower again. Adding a little more red to my mixture to create a darker yellow. I'm getting a little bit of a bloom. So a bloom is an area on your watercolor painting where you've painted a section and it's still damp, and then an adjoining wet area runs into it and creates what's called a bloom. So that's what you see there. But at this stage it doesn't matter because I'm still painting in that area, so all I'm going to do is grab a little more of my brown and just put that right back in there, and that's fine. Now the center of the sunflower also has a form and a shape. It's got kind of a depressed central area, so that's going to create a little bit of a cast shadow, and there's a lot of texture in there. So I'm just kind of using the tip of my brush to make a little kind of speckly effect of where all those seeds are forming on the flower head. All right, so now that this is wet enough that I want to leave that alone for a minute, give that a chance to dry, and while that's drying, I'm just going to switch over to my leaves. Now I'm taking a medium green, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove some of that excess moisture because I want to do a little drawing with the tip of my brush. So I can make out some of the lines indicating the veins on those leaves from the stamped image. Also the center vein. And so I can just pick up a couple of those details, just a little here and there. And adding a tiny bit more blue. I can add a little more dimension to some of the shadow areas, still paying attention to the direction of light. Okay, those are looking pretty good. And then let's take a look at this flower. You can see the sheen on the surface of the paper where it's still fairly wet. So I don't want to disturb that right now. But what I will do is to give you an indication of what the next step is, I'm going to grab a very strong brush load of paint, and I'm just going to put a couple of strokes on the shadow side just so that you can see how much richer I can get into some of these areas. But I am being careful to stay away from the areas that are still wet, so I give those a chance to dry and I don't disturb the painting I've already done there. But just a little bit to give you a preview of what's coming next. All right, so that's how I would go about painting my stamped image. So I'm going to put this aside for now. The other thing that I may decide to do is that once this is completely dry, I can glaze a wash of transparent yellow over the whole thing, and that's going to pick up the vibration and make it really bright. So that's one of the beautiful effects that you can do with watercolor. If it's dry enough by the end of the video today, maybe I'll be able to demonstrate it, but I'm not sure how long that's going to take right now. So let me clear this. And we'll get to my little idea for my photos. So first things first, I'm going to need a longer piece of cardstock. I'm going to need to measure Alright, so if I kind of stack all these photos together, as I mentioned, they are slightly different sizes, but they roughly measure about 2 3/4 by 3.5. So I'm going to make a note of that so I don't forget. Okay, so 2 3/4 by 3.5. Measure twice. 3.5. And this is approximate. 2 3/4. And I'm going to be using the green as the outer mat, and then I'm going to mount the photos on the yellow. So the border is going to be a two-tone border, something like that, and that tells me that I'm going to have to add about almost a 1/2 inch on each side. So if I add 1 inch to these measurements, I've got 3 3/4, changing to decimals, by 4.5. It might be a little bit wide, but I'm going to start there and see how it looks. Because the cardstock is 8.5, I'm going to change that to 4.25. So I get 2 pieces, and I'll leave that as it is for now. Like I said, this does not have to be perfect, and it's an experiment. It's all an experiment. So let's just go to 4.25. All right, so there are my pieces, and then I'm going to go ahead and score this at 3. All right, this would actually give me room to put some kind of a sentiment down at the bottom, so I may want to do that. So I'm gonna keep that option open right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and score this. Now, this is just what I'm doing. If you're following along, of course your pictures might be sized completely differently, so you'll get the idea. Let me go ahead and open this up. And then 375. So here I'm going to cut a tab, and I'm going to cut this so I have a 1/2 inch tab. All right, so that looks something like that. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing on this one. So scoring at 3 3/4. 7.5. And then another 1/2 inch for a tab, cutting at 8. Okay, so this is what I've got so far. I'm going to take my snips and I'm just going to trim away a little bevel so that that doesn't show up when I glue everything together. I'm going to grab my trusty bone folder. Okay, and then this one. All right, so I'm going to end up with this kind of an accordion that will be mounted in the book like so, and then I'll be able to pull it open. So for this, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab my tear and tape. Put that just to the side of the score line, so it's not actually on the score line. I'm going to snip off the excess. And actually, I'm going to use a combination here. So I have a little bit of the wet glue as well as the tear and tape, so that the tear and tape is going to hold that steady while the wet glue has a minute to dry. Okay. Make sure I've got this going the right way. Just like that. Now I'm going to carefully line that up so it's nice and straight. Give that another burnish with my bone folder. And there's the base of my accordion. I can go ahead and get this ready. I'm not going to put this in the book yet, but I'm going to have this ready to go. I'm just going to place more tape over there. Okay, now this is, in effect, this is going to give me room for 8 different pictures. So the idea is, and I don't know where I'm going to place this just yet, but it'll open like that. All right, so if I get that kind of lined up there, I can do this. And there's a little spot underneath here. Maybe I'll add a place to do some writing or add another picture. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So anyway, there's that. Now I'm going to create a mat that looks kind of like that for each picture. And I'm going to leave this alone for now, because if I do ultimately decide to cut it down, I don't know if I'm going to use this for a sentiment or if I'm going to just have the photo. So I'm going to keep my options open there. And I'm going to measure so if I get this lined up here like so. That's going to give me my border. So I'm going to make that 3.5. I'm just checking my numbers, and yes, it's 3.5. So I'm going to cut these down to 3.5, and I'm pretty sure the height was fairly, yeah, the height is fairly uniform here. So I'm going to keep that at 2 3/4. So let's do one together. I'm going to make this 2 3/4. Do it on this side. And then 3.5, and I'm just using up my scraps for this, any scraps that I happen to have handy, and once I get to the point where I need more, I'll start cutting more. Now something like this might be good for one of the smaller photos, so I can keep that handy. It's going to be a little bit different on each photo because there is a slight difference, but that's okay. Just add a thin bead of the green glue. I don't have to put it all over, just a little perimeter. Go ahead and get that mounted up. And this is an adorable photo I took of my friends Karen and Nadine. They were getting ready to give their hula presentation during the Spotlight talent show, and they were hilarious. So here they are, getting their plans sorted out. Give that a good burnish. I'm going to go ahead and mat up all of the photos just like that so that they will fit inside my accordion flip out. But I'm not going to glue them into the flip out yet because I have to see what order I want them all to be in. So I'll do one more, and then I'm going to go back to my stamped image. This one's going to be really tight, so I think what I'm going to do is trim the photo down slightly. So I'm just going to take off about maybe 1/8 of an inch off of each side. So that's going to fit my shape a little bit better. That looks good. You know, you don't need a lot of tools for this. A nice pair of scissors, some good glue, a ruler. You know, I love my bone burnisher or my bone folder. And you can get started. Check your old file cabinet. You may have a pile of these old file folders ready to go. Okay, so it's going to look something like that. Put this in. The other thing is that if I do decide to add, for instance, a vertical photo, I love this photo. There's Purple Renee peeping in through the Danda Cabana window as I'm chopping up these gorgeous, delicious, fresh peaches. Oh my God, they were so good, just fresh off the trees. And I just love all the colors between Purple Renee and what she's wearing, the bouquet and the peaches. It's just such a great photo. So, yeah, so you might want to make sure that as you're planning your accordion folder, that it can accommodate both landscape photos as well as portrait or vertical photos. And then, of course, if I choose to, I can add all my decorations like so. So let me zoom you in so you can get a good look at that. See how cute it is. Here we go. All right, and so this is still a tiny bit damp. I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to go back over it with another transparent layer of yellow to brighten it up, and then this will be another option I have to decorate the page. Okay, so that's where I'm at with my meetup number 3, and I have another one planned coming up that's going to be in Maryland, so that will be number 4, but that's a little bit of a ways away. So in the meantime, I'm going to be working on some of these flips, flaps, and folds, and tabs, and other gizmos that I can incorporate into my journal so I can have a little more room for writing and journaling, and maybe adding more pictures. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got some ideas. I will take a photo of the finished spread and put in the thumbnail so that you can get a look and see how it came out. And if this intrigues you and you'd like to do something like it, I've created a playlist that you can watch on my YouTube channel, and that is Dandelion Cottage Design. And I'm just adding videos as I go along, as I develop the Butterfly Tribe Travel Journal, and you'll be able to see step by step how it all comes together. So please go check that out. Please subscribe. Please like all the things. And I will see you next time. So stay well, stay creative, stay happy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.